The dust rose in lazy spirals behind the wagon wheels as it creaked to a stop at the edge of Dry Creek. Lena Morrison pulled the worn leather reins tight, her hands rough from months of travel. Beside her, 5-year-old Emma clutched a corn-husked doll, her blue eyes wide as she took in the ramshackle buildings that made up the town. "Is this home, Mama?" Emma's voice was small, uncertain. Lena smoothed back a strand of her daughter's sun-bleached hair. "For now, sweet pea, for now." The Arizona heat still clung to their clothes like a second skin, but here in this forgotten corner of the frontier, perhaps they could finally stop running. She'd sold everything, the house, her mother's china, even her wedding ring, to get this far from the memories that haunted her nights. Dry Creek wasn't much to look at. A dozen weathered buildings lined the main street. Sullivan's General Store, a saloon with bat-wing doors hanging crooked, a small church with a bell tower that leaned slightly to the left. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly, turning the packed earth street into a furnace. "You lost, ma'am?" A grizzled man in dusty overalls emerged from the shade of the general store's porch. "Looking for work," Lena replied, lifting her chin. "Heard there might be positions at the ranches hereabouts." The man's eyes narrowed, taking in her travel-worn dress and the absence of a man beside her. "Widow?" She nodded once, curtly. It was easier than explanations. "Only spread hiring is the McCullen place," he said, spitting tobacco juice into the dirt. "Though I'd think twice about that if I were you." "Why's that?" "Rafe McCullen ain't exactly sociable. Man keeps to himself out there, edge of the mountains. Some say he's got ghosts of his own." The man's gaze lingered on Emma. "Might not be the place for a young'un." Lena's jaw tightened. She'd faced worse than an unsociable rancher. "How do I find it?" The man shrugged. "Follow the road north till you see the broken windmill. Turn west toward the mountains. Can't miss it, only green patch for miles, thanks to Willow Creek running through." He paused. "Don't say I didn't warn you." The McCullen Ranch sat like a lonely sentinel against the backdrop of Red Rock Mountains. As promised, it was an oasis of green in the burnt landscape, cottonwoods clustered near a creek, their leaves rustling in the hot wind. The main house was solid, built from local stone and timber, with a wide porch that wrapped around 2 sides. Beyond it, she could see a barn, corrals, and what looked like a bunkhouse. Lena stopped the wagon near the barn. The place seemed deserted except for a few horses in the nearest corral. She helped Emma down, then approached the house, her boots raising small puffs of dust with each step. "Stay close," she murmured to Emma, who pressed against her skirts. She knocked on the heavy wooden door. Silence. She knocked again, louder. "Round back," a deep voice called from somewhere behind the house. Lena followed the porch around to find a man bent over a saddle on a sawhorse, working oil into the leather with practiced movements. He didn't look up as she approached. "Mr. McCullen?" "Yeah." His hands never stopped their work. "I'm Lena Morrison. This is my daughter Emma. I heard you might be looking for help." Now he looked up, and Lena involuntarily took a half-step back. Rafe McCullen was a big man, broad-shouldered and lean-hipped, with the kind of stillness that reminded her of a wolf deciding whether to attack or retreat. Dark hair fell across his forehead, and his eyes were the color of winter sky. But it was the scar that drew her gaze, a vicious line that ran from below his left ear down to disappear beneath his collar. "No women," he said flatly, returning to his work. "No children. I can cook, clean, mend. I know horses and cattle. I'm not afraid of hard work." "I said no." Emma tugged on Lena's skirt. "Mama, I'm thirsty." The man's gaze flickered to the child, and something shifted in his expression, there and gone so fast Lena might have imagined it. "There's a pump by the trough," he said gruffly, nodding toward the barn. "Thank you." Lena hesitated. "Mr. McCullen, I've come a long way. We've nowhere else to go. At least let me prove I can do the work. 1 week. If you're not satisfied, we'll move on." He straightened slowly, and she realized just how tall he was. "Why here? Why Dry Creek?" "It's far enough," she said simply. Their eyes met. And in that moment, she saw he understood. Whatever she was running from, he recognized the look of someone trying to outrun their past. "Can't pay much," he said finally. "Room and board in the old foreman's cabin, plus $2 a week. You cook, clean the main house, tend the kitchen garden, laundry once a week." His jaw tightened. "You stay out of the barn after dark and away from the main house except for work. That clear?" "Yes, sir." "And the girl? She won't be any trouble, I promise." He studied them both for a long moment, then jerked his head toward a small cabin set back among the cottonwoods. "That's yours. Then there's a wood stove, bed, and table. Pumps out back. You can start tomorrow dawn. I take breakfast at 5. Relief flooded through her. "Thank you, Mr. McCullen. You won't regret this." "We'll see." He turned back to his saddle. Dismissal clear in every line of his body. The foreman's cabin was small, but clean, with a single room that served as kitchen and living space, and a tiny bedroom barely big enough for the narrow bed. But the roof was sound, the windows had glass, and the door had a solid lock. After months of boarding houses and camping rough, it felt like a palace. As Lena unpacked their few belongings, Emma explored their new home, running her small hands over everything. "Mama, why is that man sad?" Lena paused in folding their spare clothes. "What makes you think he's sad?" "His eyes, like yours sometimes, when you think I'm not looking. Out of the mouths of babes." Lena knelt beside her daughter. "Sometimes grown-ups carry heavy things inside them, but that's not for us to worry about. We're here to work and make a new start. Can you help me with that?" Emma nodded solemnly. "I'll be good, I promise." "I know you will. Sweet pea." That first week tested every ounce of Lena's determination. Rafe McCullen was a man of rigid habits and profound silence. He appeared at the kitchen door at 5 sharp each morning, ate whatever she put in front of him without comment, and disappeared until noon. The same routine repeated at dinner. He never thanked her, never complained, never spoke beyond the bare minimum required. But Lena noticed things. How he always left his muddy boots outside rather than track dirt across her clean floors. How fresh game appeared on the kitchen step. Rabbits, quail, once a small deer haunch. How he'd repaired the loose board on the cabin step without being asked. The house itself told its own story. It was a bachelor's dwelling, functional but barren of comfort. Yet she found traces of another life, a woman's rocking chair in the corner, covered in dust, faded curtains that someone had embroidered with tiny flowers, a set of china plates, too fine for everyday use, carefully wrapped and stored in the highest cupboard. At night, she could see the glow of a lamp in the barn long after dark, could hear the sound of hammer on metal. What kept him out there? She wondered. What ghosts was he trying to outwork? The heat was brutal that summer. By midday, the air shimmered like water over the packed earth, and even the flies were too tired to buzz. Lena learned to do her heavy work in the early morning, saving mending and light tasks for the afternoon when she could sit in the shade of the porch. It was on such an afternoon, 2 weeks into her employment, that she saw Rafe heading to the creek. Without thinking, she followed at a distance, Emma napping safely in the cabin. She told herself she was checking if he needed any clothes washed. But the truth was simpler. Curiosity. She found him standing knee-deep in the water, shirt discarded on the bank. The scar she'd glimpsed at his neck continued down across his shoulder and chest. A brutal reminder of violence survived. But it was the other scars that made her breath catch, the crisscross of old wounds that spoke of battle, of a life lived at the sharp edge of death. He turned suddenly, as if sensing her presence, and their eyes met across the distance. Lena waited for anger, for harsh words. Instead, he simply bent, cupped water in his hands, and let it run over his head. "Water's cool," he said, "if you and the girl want to wade later." It was the closest thing to kindness he'd shown, and it made her throat tight. "Thank you. I'll bring Emma down before supper." She turned to go, then stopped. "Mr. McCullen? Whatever happened, it's not my business. But if you ever need tending, those scars, I mean, I know some healing." His laugh was short, bitter. "Some things don't heal, Mrs. Morrison. Best remember that." But that night, for the first time, he thanked her for supper. And when she brought Emma to wade in the creek, she found he'd strung a rope swing from the big cottonwood. Emma's delighted laughter echoed across the desert, and Lena caught the ghost of a smile on Rafe McCullen's face as he watched from the porch. Perhaps some things could heal, given time. Perhaps that's what they were both doing out here at the edge of the world, learning to live again, one day at a time. The screaming woke her. Lena bolted upright in the narrow bed, heart hammering against her ribs. For a moment, she thought it was her own nightmares. William's face as they put the rope around his neck, his eyes finding hers in the crowd. But no. The sound came from outside, from the direction of the barn. She pulled her shawl around her shoulders and crept to the window. The moon was full, casting silver light across the yard. There, a figure slumped against the corral fence. Rafe. Without thinking, she slipped outside, bare feet silent on the cool earth. As she drew closer, she could see him clearly. He sat with his back against the fence post, knees drawn up, head in his hands. His shoulders shook with what might have been sobs, though no sound escaped him now. "Mr. McCullen!" His head snapped up. In the moonlight, his face was ravaged, eyes wild with something between rage and anguish. Blood seeped through the bandana at his neck where the scar had split open. "Get back inside." His voice was raw, broken glass. "You're bleeding. I heard what you said." Lena moved closer, slow and careful like approaching a wounded animal. "But I'm not leaving you out here bleeding." She knelt beside him, close enough to smell whiskey and sweat and the copper tang of blood. Her fingers went to the bandana, and he flinched away. "Don't. It needs tending. Leave it be." But she was already pulling the cloth away, revealing the angry red line where the old scar had torn. Without the bandana, she could see the full extent of it, a rope burn. She realized with a sick lurch of her stomach, someone had tried to hang Rafe McCullen and failed. Her fingers ghosted over the damaged skin, and he went utterly still beneath her touch. Not the stillness of calm, but the frozen tension of a man waiting for a blow. "Inside," she said quietly. "Let me clean this properly." "No." "Then here." She rose, went to the pump, and returned with fresh water and a clean cloth from her apron pocket. He watched her approach with hooded eyes, but didn't pull away when she began to clean the wound. "Nightmares?" she asked softly. A muscle jumped in his jaw. "Sometimes." "About the war?" "After..." The word came out clipped, final. She wrung out the cloth, watched the water run pink. "My husband had them too, the nightmares. He'd wake screaming about things he'd seen in Missouri, things he'd done, things done to him." Rafe's breathing hitched. "Your husband? What was his name?" Something in his tone made her hands still. William Morrison." The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words. "Finally," he asked. "How did he die?" Lena's throat closed. She'd told the easy lie so many times. Fever, accident, Indians. But sitting here in the darkness with this scarred man, she found she couldn't. "Hanged, Fort Grant, spring of '69. The words came out flat, emotionless. "They said he was a spy, passing information to the Apache. He wasn't." Rafe's whole body jerked as if she'd struck him. His eyes, when they met hers, were black with something that might have been horror. "Lena, don't." She pressed the cloth to his neck with steady hands, though her heart was racing. "Whatever you're about to say, don't. Not tonight." He caught her wrist, his grip gentle but firm. "You don't understand. I understand plenty." She pulled free, continued her ministrations. "I understand that we've both seen too much, done things, had things done to us. But right now, you're hurt and I'm here, and that's all that matters." His laugh was broken. "You have no idea who you're... I know you leave firewood by my door when you think I'm asleep. I know you fixed Emma's doll when she left it in the yard. I know you watch us sometimes with such longing it makes my chest ache. She tied off the fresh bandage. That's who you are. The rest is just ghosts. Ghosts have a way of coming back. Then we'll face them when they do. She gathered her supplies and stood. He remained on the ground, looking up at her with an expression she couldn't read. Why? He asked finally. Why tend to me? Because everyone deserves kindness, Mr. McCullen. Even men who think they don't. She left him there and returned to the cabin, hands shaking now that the crisis had passed. Through the window. She watched him eventually rise and head to the house, his movements slow and careful like a man carrying a great weight. The next morning, he wasn't at the kitchen door at 5. Lena waited, watching the sun creep over the mountains, painting the desert in shades of gold and red. At 5:30, she prepared a tray and carried it to the house. She found him at his desk in the study, fully dressed but haggard, staring at something in his hands. As she entered, he quickly tucked it away, but not before she glimpsed what looked like a military commission. I brought breakfast. He nodded toward a clear spot on the desk. Thank you. How's the neck? Fine. They existed in awkward silence while he ate. Lena busied herself straightening the already tidy room, aware of his eyes following her movements. There's a sandstorm coming, he said suddenly. Probably hit by afternoon. You'll want to secure everything. Bring in extra water. Could last a day or two. How can you tell? The mountains. He gestured toward the window. See how they look hazy? And the birds have gone quiet. Animals always know. She studied the view. He was right. There was an odd quality to the light, a heaviness to the air despite the early hour. I'll prepare. Lena. Her name on his lips stopped her at the door. Last night. Thank you. She nodded and left, not trusting her voice. The storm hit just after 3, announced by a wall of dust that turned day to twilight. Lena had done as instructed, secured the shutters, brought in water, even moved the chickens to the enclosed coop. She and Emma huddled in the cabin as the wind howled and dust seeped through every crack. Mama, I'm scared, Emma whispered, pressed against her side. It's just wind, sweet pea. We're safe inside. But as the hours passed and the storm intensified, Lena began to worry. The cabin creaked and groaned under the assault. Fine dust filled the air despite her efforts, making breathing difficult. A pounding at the door made them both jump. Lena cracked it open to find Rafe, barely visible through the swirling dust, a bandana over his face. Main house, he shouted over the wind. Stone walls, safer. Without hesitation, Lena bundled Emma in a blanket. Rafe lifted the child into his arms and led the way, Lena gripping the back of his shirt to keep from getting lost in the few yards between buildings. The house was indeed more solid, the stone walls muffling the worst of the wind's shriek. Rafe carried Emma to a bedroom, the one with the rocking chair. Lena noted and settled her on the bed. You'll be safe here, he told the child, his voice gentler than Lena had ever heard it. This house has weathered worse storms. Emma studied him with solemn eyes. Will you stay? He glanced at Lena, uncertain. If your mother allows. Please, Lena said simply. They spent the night in that room. Lena in the rocking chair with Emma curled in the bed. Rafe sitting on the floor with his back against the wall, as the storm raged outside. They talked in low voices, safe topics at first. The ranch, the challenges of desert life, Emma's education. But as the hours wore on and exhaustion lowered their guards, the conversation deepened. My wife loved storms, Rafe said suddenly. Said they washed the world clean, gave everything a fresh start. What happened to her? Fever, 3 summers back. He stared at his hands. I was away. Army business. By the time I got word and made it home. I'm sorry. She was the gentle one. Knew how to soften my rough edges. Without her, he shrugged. No reason to try anymore. That's not true. Lena leaned forward. I've seen you with Emma. There's gentleness in you still. You don't know what I've done, and you don't know what I've survived. She met his gaze steadily. We're not our worst moments. Rafe, we're what we choose to do next. He looked away first. You said your husband's name was William Morrison. Yes. From Missouri. Yes. Her heart began to pound. Accused of giving information to the Apache about Army supply routes. He wasn't a spy. The words came out fierce. He was a good man trying to prevent bloodshed. He thought if the Apache knew the Army's movements, they could avoid them, prevent massacres on both sides. It wasn't treason. It was compassion. Rafe's face had gone gray. I know. How could you? The realization hit her like a physical blow. No, I was the officer in charge of the execution detail. The words fell between them like stones. Fort Grant, April 15th, 1869. The rocking chair stilled. Lena stared at him, unable to breathe, unable to think. Emma made a small sound in her sleep, and they both froze until she settled again. You? The word was barely a whisper. I argued against it, told my superiors the evidence was thin, that Morrison was just an idealistic fool, not a traitor. They said orders were orders. His hands clenched into fists. I could have refused, should have, but I was a good soldier. I followed orders. Get out. Her voice was steady now, cold as winter stone. Lena, get out of this room before I wake my daughter with my screaming. He rose stiffly, paused at the door. I see his face every night, him and all the others, but his most of all, because he looked at me at the end and said, "Tell my wife and daughter I love them." I couldn't even do that right. Then he was gone, leaving Lena shaking in the rocking chair. Her world tilted off its axis once again. Outside, the storm raged on. But it was nothing compared to the tempest in her heart. The storm passed by dawn, leaving the world scoured clean and strange. Lena emerged from the house with Emma to find the landscape transformed, drifts of sand piled against buildings, the garden half buried, fence posts leaning at odd angles, but the mountains stood clear against a sky so blue it hurt to look at. Rafe was already working, digging out the water troughs. He didn't look up as they passed. For 3 days, they moved around each other like ghosts. Lena left his meals on the porch. He took them without a word. The easy rhythm they'd found was shattered, replaced by a silence that ached. Emma noticed, of course. Why doesn't Mr. Rafe eat with us anymore? He's busy, sweet pea. Is he sad again? Lena's hand stilled on the washing. I think we're all a little sad sometimes. Maybe we could make him a pie. Pie makes everything better. Despite everything, Lena smiled. Maybe it does. She spent the afternoon teaching Emma to roll crust, letting her cut leaf shapes from the scraps. The familiar motion soothed her. Flour and butter, salt and water. The alchemy of turning simple things into comfort. She didn't realize Rafe had entered the kitchen until Emma squealed. "Mr. Rafe, we're making apple pie." He stood in the doorway, hat in hands, looking uncertain. "Smells good. Mama says pie makes everything better," Emma informed him solemnly. His eyes found Lena's across the kitchen. "Does it now?" "Sometimes," Lena said quietly. "Would you like to stay for supper?" He cleared his throat. "I need to check the fence lines. Storm did some damage. The pie will keep." He nodded and fled. But that evening, she found a bundle on the kitchen step, wild herbs she'd mentioned wanting for her garden, carefully wrapped in damp burlap to keep them fresh. It was a beginning. Slowly, carefully, they rebuilt their routine. Rafe appeared for meals again, though he barely spoke. Lena resumed her duties, finding solace in the simple tasks of keeping house, and if their eyes met across the table, if their hands brushed when she served coffee, they both pretended not to notice the spark that refused to die. 2 weeks after the storm, Lena took Emma to the creek for their evening ritual. The water was running high from rain in the mountains, cold and clear. Emma splashed happily while Lena sat on the bank, mending one of Rafe's shirts. "Looks like rain again?" She didn't startle anymore when he appeared. He moved quiet as a cat, but she'd learned to sense his presence. "Good for the garden?" she replied, not looking up from her stitching. He settled on a rock nearby, maintaining careful distance. Lena, we need to talk. No, we don't. I can't change what I did, can't bring him back, but you deserve to know. I said no. She jabbed the needle through the fabric with unnecessary force. He was brave. The words came out rushed, desperate. At the end, stood straight, looked me in the eye, said he forgave us all. Said, his voice cracked, said to watch over you if I could. The shirt slipped from her numb fingers. What? He knew my name, knew I'd argued against the charges, asked me to find you, make sure you were cared for. I tried, Lena, searched for months, but you'd vanished like smoke. We went to my sister's in California. She died of cholera that winter. Lena's voice was hollow. After that, we just kept moving. I'm sorry for all of it. For being too much a coward to refuse orders. For failing to find you. For... He gestured helplessly between them. For this. Emma chose that moment to slip on a wet rock. She went down with a splash and a wail, and both adults rushed to her. Rafe reached her first, plucking her from the water and cradling her against his chest. There now, little one, you're all right, just a bump. Emma buried her face in his shirt, sobbing dramatically, over her head. His eyes met Lena's, full of such tenderness it took her breath away. Let's get you warm and dry, Lena said, reaching for her daughter, but Emma clung tighter to Rafe. Want him to carry me? Something shifted in Lena's chest, a wall crumbling despite her efforts to shore it up. She nodded, and they walked back together, Rafe carrying Emma while Lena wrapped them both in her shawl. That night, after Emma was asleep, Lena found herself on the porch, watching lightning dance over the mountains. She wasn't surprised when Rafe joined her, keeping to the far end of the steps. She's not hurt, just scared. She'll have forgotten by morning. Children are resilient. They have to be out here. She pulled her shawl closer. Rafe, what William asked you to do? Watching over us, is that why you hired me? A long pause. No. I didn't know who you were until that night you told me his name. The way you said it, the date. He scrubbed a hand over his face. I should have sent you away then. Why didn't you? Because I'm a selfish bastard. Because for the first time in 3 years, my house felt like a home. Because your little girl's laughter. His voice went rough. Because I couldn't. Thunder rumbled closer, and the first fat raindrops began to fall. Neither of them moved. I dream about him, Lena said quietly. Not nightmares, just ordinary moments. Teaching Emma to fish, fixing the barn door, singing off key while he shaved. A tear slipped down her cheek, mixed with rain. I loved him. Part of me always will. But Rafe, I'm so tired of being angry, tired of hating. It's like drinking poison and waiting for the world to die. You have every right to hate me. I know. She turned to face him fully. That's not what I'm saying. His breath caught. Lena, I'm saying that Emma needs more than a ghost for a mother. I'm saying that kindness matters more than history. I'm saying... She stood, moved to stand before him. I'm saying that when you held my daughter today, when you comfort her fears and fix her toys and push her on that swing, you're not the man who followed orders. You're the man I've come to... He surged to his feet, catching her hands. Don't say it. Not yet. I couldn't bear it if you... If I what? Changed my mind? Ran away? She freed one hand, laid it against his scarred cheek. I'm done running. The rain came harder now, soaking them both. Rafe stared down at her like a man drowning, like she was both the flood and the ark. His hands shook as they framed her face. I don't deserve... None of us deserve grace. That's what makes it grace. The first kiss was tentative, a question asked and answered. The second was desperate. Years of loneliness and pain and need poured out beneath the desert rain. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Lena, just her name, but weighted with everything. I know. She pressed her forehead to his chest, felt his heart racing to match hers. We'll go slow. For Emma. For us. But Rafe, no more ghosts. They've had enough of our lives. His arms came around her, solid and warm. "No more ghosts," he agreed. They stood there as the storm swept over them, washing the world clean, just as his wife had always said, and when Emma called out, frightened by the thunder, they went to her together. Later, much later, Lena would remember this as the moment everything truly began. Not when she'd arrived at the ranch, not even when she'd learned the truth, but here, in the rain, when they'd chosen to step forward instead of back. The next morning dawned clear and fresh. Rafe appeared for breakfast with a handful of wildflowers, presenting them to Emma with elaborate ceremony. "For the lady of the house," he said gravely. Emma giggled and insisted on putting them in her mother's hair. As Lena served breakfast, Rafe caught her hand. Dance with me at the Harvest Festival? It was still weeks away, but she understood what he was really asking. Was she willing to face the town's scrutiny? To publicly acknowledge whatever was growing between them? "I'd like that," she said simply. His smile transformed his face, years dropping away to reveal the man he might have been before war and duty carved their marks. "So would I." They took their time, as promised. Shared meals became shared evenings on the porch. Cautious touches became familiar, his hand steadying her as she climbed down from the wagon, her fingers brushing his hair back when it fell in his eyes. Emma blossomed under the attention, chattering freely to Rafe about everything and nothing. He taught her to whittle, to read animal tracks, to whistle like the desert birds. In return, she taught him to laugh again. "Mama's smiling more," Emma announced one evening, apropos of nothing. "Is she now?" Rafe glanced at Lena, who blushed. "Yep, she hums when she cooks. That means she's happy." "And are you happy, little one?" Emma considered this seriously. "Yes, are you?" Rafe's eyes found Lena's across the yard. "Getting there." "Good," Emma said decisively. "Everyone should be happy." If only it were that simple, Lena thought. But watching Rafe help Emma with her letters, patient and encouraging, she began to believe it might be. The first sign of trouble came on a Tuesday morning. Lena had taken the wagon to town for supplies, Emma beside her on the bench, both singing a silly song about frogs. The normalcy of it, the sun on their faces, the creak of wheels, her daughter's laughter, made what happened next feel like a bad dream. Mrs. Patterson, the grocer's wife, had always been cordial. Today, she looked through Lena as if she were glass. "I'm sorry," she said, not sounding sorry at all. "We're not able to fill your order. Is there a problem with credit? Mr. McCullen." "It's not about credit." The woman's mouth pursed like she'd tasted something sour. "We simply can't serve you. Try the Sullivan place down the street." Confused, Lena guided Emma back outside. The child picked up on the tension immediately. Why was she mean, Mama? "I don't know. Sweet pea, let's try Mr. Sullivan." But Sullivan wouldn't meet her eyes either. "Best you head on back to the ranch. Mrs. Morrison. Nothing for you here." It wasn't until she passed the church that understanding dawned. A cluster of women stood on the steps, heads bent together, voices carrying on the still air. Living in sin with that killer. Poor child exposed to God knows what. Heard she's not even really a widow. Someone finally recognized him from Fort Grant. Lena's hands tightened on the reins until her knuckles went white. So, the past had found them after all. She managed to get flour and salt from the Mexican trader at the edge of town, who cared more for coin than gossip. But as they loaded the wagon, Emma was unnaturally quiet. "Mama, why did those ladies say mean things?" "Sometimes people are afraid of what they don't understand." "Are they afraid of Mr. Rafe?" Lena chose her words carefully. "Some people are, but we know better, don't we? We know he's good and kind. He saved me from drowning. Yes, he did. Then they're stupid." "Emma!" But Lena's heart wasn't in the scolding. They were almost to the ranch when it happened. Emma had been playing with her doll, making it dance on the wagon seat. A rough patch sent the wagon lurching, and the doll flew from her hands into the road. "Dolly, we'll get her. Don't, Emma, no!" But the child had already scrambled down, running back for her treasure. She didn't see the riders coming around the bend, didn't hear the thunder of hooves until the horse's shoulder caught her, sent her flying into the rocks beside the road. She landed with a sound that would haunt Lena forever, a wet snap, then silence. "Emma!" Lena flew from the wagon, skidding to her knees beside her daughter's still form. Blood matted the blonde hair, and one small arm bent at an impossible angle. Well, hell. One of the riders dismounted, a young man with the scraggly beginnings of a beard. Kid came out of nowhere. "Get help!" Lena gasped, gathering Emma against her. "Please." "Ain't our fault," another rider said. "You saw, she ran right at us. Please." They exchanged glances. "Doc's probably at the saloon this time of day. We'll tell him." They mounted up, and were gone in a cloud of dust. Emma stirred, whimpering. "Mama, hurts." "I know, baby, I know. We're going home." Somehow, she got Emma into the wagon, cushioning her with their shawls. The 5 miles to the ranch felt like 50. She alternated between flying over the ruts and creeping along, terrified each bump would worsen the damage. "Rafe!" She was screaming before the wagon even stopped. "Rafe, help!" He erupted from the barn, took one look, and vaulted into the wagon bed. His hands were infinitely gentle as he assessed Emma's injuries. "Arm's broken. Head wound's not deep, but she's likely concussed. We need to set the arm." His eyes met Lena's. "You'll need to hold her." They carried Emma inside, laid her on the kitchen table. Rafe splinted the arm with efficiency that spoke of too much practice, while Lena held her daughter and whispered prayers. Promises. Anything to distract from the pain. "There's laudanum in the cabinet," Rafe said quietly. "Left from before." They dosed Emma carefully, and soon she slept, cradled in Lena's arms in the big bed. Rafe sat vigil with them, changing the cold compresses on Emma's head, monitoring her breathing. "What happened?" Lena told him. "The snubs in town, the women's gossip, the riders." His face darkened with each word. "Who were they? The riders?" "I don't know. Young. One had red hair, called the other Jake." "The Morrison boys." His voice was flat. "Tom and Jake Morrison." The name hit her like cold water. "Morrison? But—" "Your husband's cousins. They've been sniffing around town lately, asking questions." "Oh, God." She pressed her face into Emma's hair. "This is my fault. If I hadn't come here—" "Stop." His hand covered hers. "This isn't on you. They know who you are, who we are to each other. The whole town knows." "Let them—" "Rafe." "No." He moved to kneel beside the bed, eyes fierce. "I'm done hiding, done being ashamed. What I did was wrong, but I've paid for it every day since. And you, Lena, you and Emma are the only good things in my life. I won't give that up for their judgment." Emma stirred, eyes fluttering open. "Mr. Rafe?" "Right here, little one." "Did you get Dolly?" He pulled the battered doll from his pocket. "Safe and sound." Emma smiled and drifted back to sleep. Lena touched Rafe's face, traced the line of his scar. "They'll make our lives miserable. They'll try." He turned his head, pressed his lips to her palm. "But I've faced worse than small-town gossip, haven't you?" She had. God knew she had. The next morning brought the sheriff. Lena watched through the window as he spoke with Rafe on the porch, saw Rafe's shoulders tighten, his hands clench. When the sheriff left, Rafe came inside looking grim. "He says the Morrison boys claim Emma ran at their horses deliberately, that you're an unfit mother, exposing her to unsavory influences. They want me gone. They want revenge. For William." He paced the kitchen like a caged wolf. "Sheriff says there's talk of getting the territorial judge involved. Child endangerment charges." "They can't—" "They can try." He stopped, faced her. "We could leave. Pack up. Head to California or Oregon. Start fresh where no one knows us." "Run again?" Lena shook her head. "I'm tired of running. This is our home. Then we fight." But fighting was harder than either anticipated. The general store officially barred them. The church suggested they worship elsewhere. Parents pulled their children inside when Emma ventured out, still pale and favoring her mended arm. It was Father Miguel from the Mexican chapel who brought news that changed everything. "Señora," he said, hat in hand at their door. "I think you should know. The Morrison boys. They meet with others at the old mine. They speak of justice, of taking matters into their own hands." "How many?" Rafe's voice was deadly quiet. 6, maybe 7. They drink, they talk big. But talk becomes action when hate feeds it. That night, Lena woke to find Rafe's side of the bed empty. They'd been sharing a bed for appearance sake, 2 souls seeking comfort in proximity, if not yet in passion. She found him loading his rifle in the kitchen. "No, they're coming. Lena, tomorrow night. According to Miguel's sources, I won't wait for them to bring violence here. So you'll bring it to them instead?" She caught his hands. "That's not who you are anymore." "Isn't it?" His laugh was bitter. "I'm exactly who they say I am. A killer. Maybe it's time I reminded them why that should make them cautious. And prove them right. Give them the excuse they need." She framed his face, forced him to meet her eyes. "Rafe McCullen, you are not that man. You're the one who makes toy boats for my daughter, who leaves wildflowers on my pillow, who holds me when the nightmares come. That's who you are." He broke then, pulling her against him, burying his face in her hair. "I can't lose you, either of you. I can't." "You won't." She held him tight, feeling the tremors run through his strong frame. "We'll face them together. Whatever comes." "I love you." The words came out rough, desperate. "I should have said it before. Should have." She silenced him with a kiss, pouring all her own unspoken feelings into the touch. When they parted, both were breathing unsteadily. "I know," she whispered. "I love you too. Despite everything. Because of everything. I love you." They stood there in the darkness, holding each other, while outside the desert wind howled its lonely song. Tomorrow would bring what it would bring, but tonight they had this, 2 broken souls who'd found in each other the promise of wholeness. "Come back to bed," Lena said finally. "Emma needs us strong." He let her lead him back, but she felt his watchfulness in the dark, knew he'd lie awake guarding them till dawn, her protector, her love, her unlikely salvation. And she would protect him in turn, with everything she had. The riders came at dusk, when the sky bled crimson over the mountains. Lena was tucking Emma into bed when she heard the horses, too many for visitors, too deliberate for passing travelers. "Stay here," she whispered to Emma, pressing Dolly into her arms. "No matter what you hear, stay in bed. Mama, promise me." "I promise." Lena kissed her daughter's forehead and slipped out, closing the door firmly behind her. Through the window, she could see them, 7 men, arranged in a semicircle before the house. The Morrison brothers at the center, whiskey brave and righteous with borrowed fury. Rafe stood on the porch, rifle loose in his hands. Not aimed, but ready. "Evening, Tom, Jake." His voice carried that dangerous calm she'd heard only once before. "Bit late for a social call. We ain't here to socialize with killers." Tom Morrison spat tobacco juice into the dirt. "We're here for family justice. Your cousin's been dead 6 years. Seems like slow justice to me. Took us time to track down his widow. Imagine our surprise, finding her shacked up with the very man who put the rope around Billy's neck." Lena stepped onto the porch. Every eye swung to her. "Get back inside," Rafe said quietly. "No." She moved to stand beside him. "This is about me as much as you." Jake Morrison laughed. Ugly and mean. "Look at that. The grieving widow, spreading her legs for her husband's killer. Billy must be rolling in his grave." Rafe's rifle twitched. Lena placed a steadying hand on his arm. "My husband is at peace," she said clearly. "He was a good man who believed in forgiveness. You dishonor his memory with this. We dishonor him." Tom's voice rose. "You're the one dishonoring him. Woman, living with this murderer, letting him put his hands on you, on Billy's child. Enough. Rafe stepped forward. You want someone to blame. Blame me, but Lena and her daughter have nothing to do with this. They got everything to do with it. One of the other riders spoke up, a hard-faced man with silver in his beard. Way we see it, she's as guilty as you, traitor to her own husband's memory. What do you want? Lena asked, though she feared she knew. Justice. Tom said, You leave. Tonight. Both of you. Leave the girl. She's Morrison blood. We'll see she's raised proper, away from the likes of him. Over my dead body. The words tore from Lena's throat. That can be arranged. Everything happened at once. Tom's hand went for his gun. Rafe shoved Lena behind him, rifle swinging up. The silver-bearded man drew and fired. The bullet caught Rafe high in the shoulder, spinning him back. His rifle discharged into the air as he fell. Lena dropped beside him, pressing her hands against the blooming red stain. Now, Tom said, satisfaction thick in his voice. About that arrangement. The shot came from behind them. Tom's gun flew from his hand as he cursed and grabbed his wrist. Everyone spun to see Father Miguel on horseback, an old cavalry pistol in his hand and 5 vaqueros flanking him. I think, the priest said mildly, you gentlemen should leave. This ain't your business, Padre. A woman and child threatened in my parish? Very much my business. Miguel's smile was sharp as a blade. Also, the sheriff is on his way. I took the liberty of sending word about an illegal lynching party. He seemed most interested. The distant sound of hoofbeats confirmed his words. Tom Morrison looked between his wounded wrist, Rafe bleeding on the porch, and the approaching law. This ain't over, he snarled. Oh, I think it is. Miguel's pistol never wavered. You see, I've been doing some checking. Seems you boys have been busy, rustling cattle from the Delgado ranch, selling them across the border. The sheriff will want to discuss that too. Jake paled. You can't prove nothing? Can I? Amazing what people tell a priest in confession. Of course, I'd never break the sacred seal. Unless, of course, I witnessed a crime myself, like attempted murder. The sheriff's posse created the rise, and the Morrison gang scattered like quail, spurring their horses in all directions. Tom cast one last venomous look at the porch before following. Let them go, Miguel told the arriving sheriff. You know where to find them if needed. Lena barely heard the explanations, the questions, the assurances. Her world had narrowed to Rafe's face, pale and drawn with pain. Get the doctor, she pleaded. I'll fetch him, one of the vaqueros said, wheeling his horse back toward town. They carried Rafe inside, laid him on the bed. Lena worked to stop the bleeding while Father Miguel kept Emma distracted in the kitchen, telling her stories about brave knights and clever princesses. Shouldn't have pushed you. Rafe gasped as she cut away his shirt. Hush, save your strength. Lena, his hand caught hers, grip weak but desperate. If I don't, you will. She pressed her forehead to his. You will, because I won't let you leave us. Do you hear me, Rafe McCullen? I won't let you go. The doctor arrived within the hour, sober, thankfully, and competent despite the town's low opinion of him. The bullet had passed through cleanly, missing anything vital by inches. He's lucky, Doc Henderson muttered, finishing the bandaging. Few inches lower, but he'll recover. If infection doesn't set in, if he rests, if he doesn't tear the wounds open again, yes. The doctor packed his bag. I'll check on him tomorrow. Try to keep him still. I know that's like asking the wind not to blow with men like him, but do your best. Lena spent the night beside Rafe, cooling his fever, coaxing water between his lips, whispering prayers and promises in the darkness. Emma crept in near dawn, climbing carefully onto the bed to curl against Rafe's good side. Is he going to be okay, Mama? Yes, sweet pea. He's strong. He saved you. It wasn't a question. He did. Just like in Father Miguel's stories, the knight protects the princess. Rafe's eyes fluttered open. Not a knight, he mumbled. You are to us, Emma said firmly, patting his hand. His gaze found Lena's, held it. The Morrisons. Gone. Miguel scared them off. She smoothed his hair back. Seems they've been rustling cattle. The sheriff's more interested in that than old grievances. Miguel. A ghost of a smile. Remind me to tithe more. Recovery was slow. The first days were touch and go, fever spiking and breaking, the wound angry and red. But Rafe was stubborn, and he had reason to fight. By the end of the week, he was sitting up, chafing at confinement. I need to check the horses. Juan is handling the horses. Lena pushed him firmly back against the pillows. You need to heal. I'm not an invalid. No, you're a fool man who got himself shot protecting us. Her voice broke. Do you know what that did to me, watching you fall? He caught her hand, pulled her down beside him on the bed. I'd do it again, 100 times over. I know. That's what terrifies me. They sat in silence, her head on his good shoulder, breathing together. Outside, she could hear Emma helping Juan with chores, her bright chatter a counterpoint to his patient responses. The town will be worse now, Rafe said eventually. The Morrisons have friends. This won't end with them running. Then we'll face it, together. You could still leave. Take Emma somewhere safe. She silenced him with a kiss, careful of his injury but firm in her intent. We've had this discussion. I'm not going anywhere. Stubborn woman. You love that about me. I do. His hand cupped her face. I love everything about you. Lena Morrison. Grant. She corrected softly. Lena Grant. It was my maiden name. I think it's time to let William rest. To be who I am now, not who I was then. Something eased in his expression. Lena Grant, he repeated. I like it. Good, because I'm planning to change it again soon. He stilled. Lena, when you're healed, she said firmly. When this mess is settled, I want to be your wife. Rafe, if you'll have me. He laughed, then winced as it pulled his wound. Woman, I'd marry you this minute if Miguel would perform the ceremony. I might hold you to that. A week later, she did. Father Miguel came to the ranch with witnesses, Juan and his wife Maria, Doc Henderson, and, surprisingly, Mrs. Chen from the Chinese laundry, who'd always been kind to Lena despite the town's prejudice. They exchanged vows in the main room. Rafe propped in a chair with Emma standing proud as witness. It wasn't the wedding either might have imagined in younger days. No white dress, no church bells, no crowd of well-wishers. But it was real, and true, and theirs. By the power vested in me, Miguel intoned, fighting a smile. I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride, Senor McCullen. Rafe pulled Lena down for a kiss that was part promise, part claim. All love. Emma clapped and cheered. The witnesses smiled. And for that moment, the world beyond the ranch didn't matter. They were a family now, official and blessed. Whatever came next, they'd weather it together. Word of the marriage spread through Dry Creek like wildfire in August grass. By the time Rafe was well enough to ride to town, the community had split down the middle. Those who viewed the union as an abomination, and those who felt the past should stay buried. The first test came at church. Lena had avoided Sunday services since the hostility began. But Father Miguel insisted they attend his small chapel. Faith needs community, he said simply. And my flock needs to remember Christian charity. So they went, Rafe still moving stiffly, Lena in her best dress, Emma between them in the wagon. The Mexican congregation welcomed them warmly, though Lena caught curious glances at Rafe's scar, at their linked hands. It was after service that trouble found them. Tom Morrison waited by their wagon, arm in a sling, accompanied by Reverend Holcomb from the Protestant church. Blasphemy, Tom spat, making holy vows with blood on your hands. Tom, Reverend Holcomb's voice carried forced patience. We agreed to handle this properly. Properly? Tom's face flushed. My cousin's widow married his killer. What's proper about that? A crowd gathered, the after-church socializing forgotten. Lena felt Rafe tense beside her, saw his hand drift toward where his gun would normally rest. She caught his wrist, held it. "Mr. McCullen." Reverend Holcomb addressed Rafe directly. "I've been asked by concerned citizens to convene a church trial to examine your past actions and current intentions." "A trial?" Lena's voice rang clear. "For what crime? Being forgiven? Finding love after loss? For murder?" Tom snarled. "For seducing a grieving widow? For following orders I wish to God I'd refused." Rafe's voice cut through the murmurs. "You want to try me, Reverend? Fine, but it won't bring William Morrison back. Won't change what happened at Fort Grant." "Perhaps not," Holcomb said. "But it might bring peace to this community." Father Miguel stepped forward. "If there's to be a trial, it should be civil, not ecclesiastical. Judge Carter arrives next week for the circuit court." "This ain't about law," Tom protested. "It's about right and wrong." "Isn't that what law is supposed to determine?" Miguel's mild tone didn't hide the steel beneath. "Unless you prefer mob justice. Senor Morrison." The crowd stirred uneasily. Memory of range wars and vigilante hangings ran deep in frontier towns. "The church," Reverend Holcomb said firmly. "Tomorrow evening. A hearing, not a trial. To air grievances and seek reconciliation." Rafe laughed, bitter and short. "Reconciliation? Is that what we're calling it?" "It's what Christian folk do," an old woman called from the crowd. "Or have you forgotten the Lord's Prayer, Rafe McCullen? Forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors." The gathering broke up slowly, people drifting away in small groups, voices low and urgent. Lena helped Emma into the wagon, aware of every eye on them. "We don't have to do this," she told Rafe as they drove home. "Yes, we do." His jaw was set. "Running now would be admitting guilt. I won't have you and Emma living under that shadow." The next evening, the church was packed, every bench filled, people standing along the walls. Lena sat in the front row with Emma, chin high despite the whispers that followed their entrance. Rafe stood before the altar, flanked by Reverend Holcomb and Father Miguel. "We're here," Holcomb began, "to seek truth and healing for our community. Mr. McCullen has agreed to answer questions about his past, particularly regarding the execution of William Morrison." "Murder," Tom Morrison corrected from his seat. "Call it what it was." "Order," Holcomb said sharply. "We'll have order, or we'll have nothing." The questions came like arrows. Why had he carried out the execution? Had he believed Morrison guilty? Did he feel remorse? How could he pursue the man's widow? Rafe answered steadily, unflinchingly. He spoke of military duty, of a young officer's fear of disobeying orders, of the doubt that ate at him when Morrison maintained his innocence, of the moment the trap dropped and how he'd caught Morrison's eyes, seen forgiveness there that haunted him worse than hatred would have. "I searched for his family after," Rafe said, voice rough. "Wanted to tell them, I don't know, that he died bravely, that I was sorry, but they'd vanished." "So you could seduce his widow?" someone called. "So I could beg her forgiveness." Rafe's eyes found Lena's. "When she came to my ranch, I didn't know who she was. By the time I learned, I was already lost." "Tell them," Lena said suddenly. Standing, "Tell them what William said at the end." Rafe's shoulders sagged. "He asked me to look after his wife and daughter if I could. Made me promise." Shocked murmurs rippled through the crowd. "You expect us to believe that?" Tom's voice cracked. "That Billy asked his killer to—" "I was there." A new voice from the back. Everyone turned as a grizzled man in cavalry uniform pushed forward. "Sergeant Marcus Webb, retired. I was on the detail that day." Lena's heart pounded as the old soldier reached the front. "McCullen's telling it true." Webb said, "I heard Morrison's last words myself. He forgave us all. Asked the lieutenant here to find his family." Webb's weathered face turned to the crowd. "You want to know what kind of man Rafe McCullen is? He nearly got himself court-martialed trying to stop that execution. Went over his captain's head, sent telegrams to Washington. When that failed, He volunteered to spring the trap himself so Morrison wouldn't die at the hands of someone who enjoyed it. "You're lying," Tom said desperately. "Got the papers to prove it." Webb pulled folded documents from his coat. Been carrying them 6 years, hoping to find Morrison's kin. His widow deserves to know her husband died with dignity. And this man, he pointed at Rafe, tried everything to save him. Lena was crying now, silent tears that Emma wiped with small hands. "Mama, don't be sad." "I'm not sad. Baby, sometimes we cry when old hurt finally heals." Reverend Holcomb examined the papers, passed them to Father Miguel, then to others in the crowd. The mood shifted, hostility giving way to uncertainty. "There's more." Webb continued. "McCullen couldn't live with what happened, resigned his commission, gave up his pension. Last I heard, he was drinking himself to death in some border town. Guess he found a better way to live with the guilt." His eyes went to Lena and Emma. "Or maybe they found him." "This changes nothing," Tom Morrison said, but his voice lacked conviction. "He still killed, under legal military orders." Judge Carter said from the back of the church. No one had seen him enter, which I've just spent 3 hours researching. Lieutenant McCullen was bound by oath to carry out the execution. His efforts to prevent it are well documented. The judge moved forward, authority in every step. "More interesting to me, Mr. Morrison, are questions about your recent activities. Cattle missing from several ranches, including the McCullen spread." Tom went white. "That's got nothing to do with, doesn't it? Seems to me you're using old grief to cover new crimes." Carter's gaze swept the crowd. "The war's been over 11 years. Folks, maybe it's time we stopped fighting it." The gathering broke up in confusion, people arguing in small groups. Lena pushed through to reach Rafe, caught his hands. "Why didn't you tell me about trying to save him?" "Would it have mattered? Dead is dead." "Lena, my protest didn't save him." "But you tried." She pressed her face to his chest. "Oh, Rafe, you tried." Webb approached, hat in hand. "Ma'am, I've got some of your husband's effects, his watch, some letters. Kept them safe, hoping to find you." "Thank you," Lena whispered. "Thank you for speaking up. Least I could do. Morrison was a good man. Naive, maybe, thinking he could broker peace with the Apache, but his heart was true." Webb glanced at Rafe. "He'd be glad to know you're cared for, both of you." As they prepared to leave, Reverend Holcomb stopped them. "Mr. McCullen, Mrs. McCullen, I owe you an apology. I let fear and prejudice guide me instead of Christian charity. We all make mistakes." "Reverend." Rafe's voice was steady. "Question is what we do after." Outside, the night air was cool and clean. Emma walked between them, holding both their hands, chattering about the stars. They were almost to the wagon when Tom Morrison stepped from the shadows. Rafe pushed Lena and Emma behind him, but Tom's hands were empty, his expression defeated. "Judge says I got 2 choices, stand trial for rustling or leave the territory." He stared at Rafe with hollow eyes. "You took everything from me, my cousin, now my home." "Your cousin was taken by fear and war," Rafe said quietly. "Your home, you lost yourself, through greed. I've got no quarrel with you. Tom, not anymore. I hate you." "I know. I hated myself for years. It's a heavy burden. Eventually, you might want to set it down." Tom turned without another word, vanishing into the darkness. They didn't see him again. A week later, word came that the Morrison brothers had headed east, 1 step ahead of the law. The town's attitude shifted slowly. Some folks remained cold, but others began to nod when they passed, even stopped to admire how Emma had grown. The general store resumed their credit. The school board agreed Emma could attend come fall. "It's not forgiveness," Lena said one evening, watching the sunset from their porch. "Not really, but it's a start. More than I expected." Rafe pulled her close. "More than I deserved." "Stop that!" She turned in his arms. "You're a good man. Rafe McCullen, the past shaped you, but it doesn't define you. Not anymore." He kissed her then, deep and sure, and she melted into him. They'd built something here, a family, a life, a future. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. "Mama, Mr. Rafe, look!" Emma's voice broke them apart. She stood by the corral, pointing at the sunset. "The sky's on fire!" And it was, brilliant reds and golds painting the desert, promising another day, another chance. Rafe swung Emma up onto his shoulders, and together they watched the light fade. 3 souls who'd found each other across loss and pain and time. Tomorrow there would be work, fences to mend, cattle to tend, a life to build. But tonight, they had this: love and forgiveness and the grace of second chances. It was enough. It was everything. The letter arrived on a Thursday morning, delivered by a dust-covered rider who wouldn't stay for coffee. Lena found Rafe in the barn, watched his face change as he read the official-looking document. "What is it?" He handed it to her wordlessly. The letterhead read, "Department of the Army, Washington." Her heart sank as she scanned the contents: an offer of reinstatement, full back pay, a commission in the Indian Wars. "They need experienced officers," Rafe said quietly. "Apache troubles are getting worse. And nothing. I'm not going." But she saw how his eyes lingered on the letter, the way his shoulders carried new tension. That night, he was restless, pacing the porch long after Emma had gone to bed. "You're thinking about it?" Lena said from the doorway. "No," but he wouldn't meet her eyes. "Rafe?" "I said no, Lena, my place is here, with you and Emma." She went to him, wrapped her arms around him from behind. "What if we went with you?" He turned sharply. "Absolutely not. Army posts are no place for a woman and child. Families follow the regiment all the time. Not my family." His voice was fierce. "I won't have you in danger. Won't have Emma growing up surrounded by violence. As opposed to the complete safety of frontier ranching." She tried for lightness, but he didn't smile. "This is different. This is choosing to walk into harm's way. You did that for years. It's who you are. Partly. Denying it won't—" "Who I was." He pulled away. "That man died at Fort Grant. I won't resurrect him." But the letter's presence poisoned the easy rhythm they'd found. Rafe threw himself into ranch work with desperate energy, as if he could outrun his own thoughts. Lena watched him, saw the war between duty and desire, past and present. It was Emma who forced the issue, in her innocent way. "Mr. Rafe," she said one evening over dinner, "why are you sad again?" "I'm not sad, little one." "Yes, you are. You get the same look Mama does when she thinks about Papa." She tilted her head. "Are you thinking about the Army? Johnny Baker says his PA saw a letter." Rafe's jaw tightened. "Johnny Baker's PA should mind his own business." "Rafe?" Lena's voice carried gentle warning. He sighed. "I'm sorry. Yes, Emma, I got a letter from the Army. They want me to come back." "To fight?" "To help keep people safe." Emma considered this. "But you keep us safe here." "Yes, that's why I'm staying." "Oh." She pushed peas around her plate. "But what if other little girls need keeping safe too?" The simplicity of it hit like a physical blow. Rafe's fork clattered to his plate. "Emma, go get ready for bed," Lena said softly, when they were alone. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Lena spoke. "She's right, you know. There are other families out there. Other William Morrisons who might be saved if the right man is making decisions." "Don't!" His voice was raw. "Don't use him to—" "I'm not using anyone. I'm telling you what I see. You're withering here. Rafe, part of you is already gone. Back to the regiment. Back to duty. My duty is here. Is it? Or is that just fear talking?" She caught his hands. "Fear that if you leave, you'll lose us. Fear that the violence will swallow you again." He jerked away. "Maybe it should scare me. You didn't see what I did. I saw what it cost you. The nightmares, the guilt. But I also see what happens when you turn your back on who you are. You think you're protecting us, but you're just building another kind of prison. I can't lose you, either of you." "Then take us with you." "Lena, listen to me." She framed his face with her hands. "Emma and I are stronger than you think. We survived before you. We survived when the town turned against us. We'll survive this too, but only if we're together. Army life is hard, dangerous. So is life, period. She smiled sadly. At least this danger would have purpose. He pulled her close, buried his face in her hair. I'm scared. Lena, scared of becoming that man again, the one who followed orders without question. You won't. You can't. You've learned too much, hurt too much. The man you are now, the one who questions, who protects, who loves. That's who they need. They talked through the night, weighing options, facing fears. By dawn, the decision was made. 3 months, Rafe said. We'll try it for 3 months. If it's too hard, too dangerous, we come home. Agreed. They spent a week preparing, arranging for Juan to manage the ranch, packing their few belongings, trying to explain to Emma why they were leaving the only real home she remembered. It's an adventure, Lena told her, fighting her own doubts. Will there be other children? Yes, lots of them. Will they be nice to me? Lena's heart clenched, remembering the cruelty in Dry Creek. I hope so, baby. We'll make sure of it. The morning of departure came too soon. Half the town gathered to see them off, some out of genuine goodwill, others simple curiosity. Father Miguel blessed their journey. Mrs. Chen pressed a small silk pouch into Emma's hands. For luck, she whispered. Even Reverend Holcomb came, shaking Rafe's hand firmly. God go with you, Mr. McCullen. May you find peace in service. They were loading the last trunk when a rider approached, Sergeant Webb, travel-worn but smiling. Heard you were heading back, he said to Rafe. Thought you might want company on the road. You're re-enlisting? Already did. Got my orders to report to Fort Apache. Same as you. He winked at Emma. Figured someone needs to keep your PA out of trouble. He's not, Emma started, then stopped, looked at Lena. Is he? Lena knelt beside her daughter. What do you think? What do you want? Emma studied Rafe with those 2 wise eyes. Then she ran to him, arms outstretched. He caught her, lifted her high. Papa, she said firmly. Papa Rafe. His voice was thick as he answered. That's right, little one. If you'll have me. Forever and ever. Forever and ever. They left as the sun climbed toward noon, wagon wheels raising dust on the long road south. Lena sat between her husband and daughter, William's watch in her pocket, Rafe's hand in hers, Emma's bright chatter filling the air. Behind them, Dry Creek grew small, then vanished. Ahead waited the unknown, new dangers, new challenges, new chances to build something from the ashes of what had been. Regrets? Rafe asked as they paused at the top of the last rise. Lena looked back once, then forward to the road unwinding before them. No. You? No. He clicked to the horses, and they moved on. Well, maybe one. What's that? I never did teach you to shoot properly. She laughed, the sound bright as Emma's giggles. Plenty of time for that, Mr. McCullen. Plenty of time. They camped that night under stars so bright they seemed touchable. Emma slept between them, worn out from excitement. Lena lay awake, listening to the night sounds, feeling the solid warmth of Rafe beside her. Thank you, he said into the darkness. For what? For seeing who I could be, not just who I was, for having faith when I didn't. That's what love does. She found his hand, intertwined their fingers. It believes in tomorrow. I love you, Lena McCullen. And I love you, all of you, past, present, and whatever comes next. They sealed it with a kiss under the vast desert sky. 2 souls who'd found their way through sorrow to something better. Not perfect, scarred and careful still, but real in theirs and worth every hard-won step. In the morning, they'd continue south toward duty and purpose. But tonight, they had this, each other, the stars, and the fierce, bright hope of hearts learning to trust in grace again. Emma stirred, mumbled something about horses and butterflies. Rafe adjusted the blanket around her, his touch infinitely gentle, watching him. Lena felt her heart swell with a love so profound it almost hurt. This was what William had wanted for them, not the grief, not the anger, but this, Life, moving forward. Love, growing from ashes. Hope, stubborn as desert flowers after rain. Sleep, Rafe whispered. Long day tomorrow. Long life tomorrow, she corrected, and felt him smile against her hair. Yes, that too. The stars wheeled overhead, ancient and patient. Somewhere a coyote called, answered by its pack. The world was vast and sometimes cruel, but here in this small circle of warmth, they were safe, they were whole, they were home, not in a place, but in each other. It was enough to build a future on. It was everything they needed to begin again. The snow came early that winter, transforming the desert into something ethereal and strange. From the window of their quarters at Fort Apache, Lena watched Emma play with the other children, her laughter carrying across the parade ground. 6 months had passed since they'd left Dry Creek, and the frightened, withdrawn child was now a confident girl who led expeditions to catch horned toads and organized elaborate games of house among the married quarters. She's blooming, Rafe said from behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. We all are. She leaned back into his warmth. Even you, Captain McCullen. The promotion had come through just before Christmas, recognition of his skill in negotiating with local tribes and preventing bloodshed, where other officers saw only enemies. Rafe saw fathers and sons, men caught between worlds just as he'd once been caught between duty and conscience. The colonel wants me to ride out to the reservation tomorrow, he said. There's been trouble with rations again. The agent is skimming. Be careful. Always am. He turned her to face him. I have too much to lose now. That evening, they attended a small gathering in the colonel's quarters. It still amazed Lena how they'd been accepted here. The officers' wives, who might have shunned her, instead embraced her, drawn by her quiet strength and willingness to help. She'd become the unofficial nurse for the post, her healing skills in constant demand. Mrs. McCullen. Colonel Davies's wife approached. I heard young Private Bennett's fever broke. Your willow bark tea, among other things. Lena smiled. He'll be back on duty within the week. You're a godsend. I swear half the post would be in the infirmary without you. Across the room, Rafe stood with a group of officers, but his eyes found hers frequently. The hard edges that had defined him when they met were still there, but softened now by purpose and peace. He'd found his place, not as the unquestioning soldier he'd been, but as a voice of reason in a world too quick to violence. The next morning brought urgent news. A band of Apache had left the reservation, driven by hunger and broken promises. The army was mobilizing to force them back. Let me go alone, Rafe argued with Colonel Davies. I know their leader, Naichi. He's reasonable. This doesn't have to end in blood. It's too dangerous, Captain. Take a full company. A show of force will only provoke them. Give me 3 days. Lena watched the argument from the doorway, saw the moment Davies capitulated. Rafe had that effect. His quiet conviction wore down opposition like water on stone. 3 days, the colonel agreed. Then I send the regiment. Rafe prepared to leave within the hour, taking only Sergeant Webb and 2 Apache scouts. Lena helped him pack, fighting the familiar fear that clawed at her chest. Come back to us, she said simply. Always. He kissed her deeply, then knelt to embrace Emma. Take care of your mother, little one. Take care of yourself. Papa. Emma pressed something into his hand, the silk pouch from Mrs. Chen, for luck. He tucked it inside his jacket, over his heart. The best luck. 3 days passed like 3 years. Lena threw herself into work, tending the sick, teaching the children, anything to keep her hands busy and her mind from wandering to what-ifs. On the 3rd evening, as the sun painted the mountains crimson, the watchman's cry went up. Riders coming, Captain McCullen returning. She ran to the gates with Emma, heart in her throat. The small party rode in slowly, and between them walked a group of Apache, men, women, and children, thin but peaceful. Naichi himself led them, speaking earnestly with Rafe. They've agreed to return, Rafe told the colonel, swinging down from his horse. In exchange for guaranteed rations and an investigation into the agent, Naichi's people are starving. Sir, they didn't leave to make war. They left to feed their children. Davies studied the Apache leader, then nodded. See that they're fed tonight. I'll wire Washington about the agent. He lowered his voice. Well done, Captain. That night, as they lay entwined in their bed, Rafe told her the whole story. How he'd found the Apache band preparing to raid a supply wagon. How he'd walked into their camp unarmed save for Emma's luck pouch. How he'd sat with Naichi through the night, sharing stories of loss and duty and the burden of keeping one's people safe. He remembered William, Rafe said quietly. Said your husband had been one of the few white men who treated his people with respect. When I told him I was married to William's widow, he shook his head. He said the spirits work in mysterious ways. They do, Lena agreed, tracing the scar on his neck. They brought us together. Do you ever wonder what he'd think? William, about us. I know what he'd think. She smiled in the darkness. He'd be glad. He was always practical that way. The living have to live. Lena, he used to say, don't waste time mourning what was. Build what will be. Spring came with wildflowers and wedding bells. 3 couples married in the post chapel, with Rafe officiating for one. A young lieutenant who reminded him of himself a decade ago. All fierce dedication and hidden doubt. Emma served as flower girl for all 3, delighted with her important duties. Getting ideas? Lena teased Rafe as they watched the dancing. We had our wedding, small but perfect. I wasn't talking about us. She placed his hand on her still flat stomach. I was thinking we might need to plan for another wedding in about 20 years. He went absolutely still. Lena, are you? The doctor confirmed it yesterday. Late autumn, he thinks. The joy on his face was something she'd treasure forever. He lifted her, spun her around, not caring who saw. When he set her down, there were tears in his eyes. A baby. Our baby. Our baby, she confirmed. They told Emma that night, watched her process the news with the gravity of an 8-year-old facing major change. Will you still love me? She asked finally. When the new baby comes. Oh, sweet pea. Lena pulled her close. We'll love you forever and ever, remember? A new baby doesn't change that. It just means more love. Like when Papa Rafe came. We didn't stop loving Papa William, but we had room for more love. Out of the mouths of babes. Exactly like that. Summer brought its own challenges. The Indian Wars heated up elsewhere, though Rafe's district remained relatively peaceful. His success in negotiation had not gone unnoticed. He was offered a position in Washington, advising on Indian policy. They discussed it long into the night. The prestige, the safety, the chance to influence policy at the highest levels. But in the end, the decision was simple. Our work is here, Rafe said, with people who need us, both sides. Lena kissed him. I was hoping you'd say that. The baby came with the first snow, a lusty boy they named James William McCullen. Emma was instantly besotted, declaring herself his protector and teacher, watching Rafe hold his son for the first time, seeing the wonder and terror and fierce love on his face. Lena felt her cup overflow. They held the baptism in the post chapel, with Father Miguel traveling from Dry Creek to perform the ceremony. Half the fort attended, along with surprising visitors. Mrs. Chen, Juan, and Maria. Even Reverend Holcomb. Dry Creek misses you. Holcomb told them, the town's prospered, but it lacks heart. Perhaps you'll find it again, Lena said generously. Perhaps. Your ranch is thriving. By the way, Juan's done well with it. Whenever you're ready to return. Someday, Rafe said, shifting baby James in his arms. But not yet. We have work here still. As the gathering continued, Lena stepped outside for air. The snow fell softly, blanketing the desert in pristine white. Rafe joined her, wrapping his coat around them both. Any regrets? He asked. Their old question. None. She leaned into him. You? Only that it took so long to get here. The journey matters as much as the destination, she said. We needed every step, every scar, every tear. They led us to this. Emma burst through the door, cheeks pink with excitement. Mama, Papa, baby James smiled at me, a real smile. They followed her inside to see their son, their miracle, their proof that beauty could grow from ashes. The gathering embraced them, soldier and civilian, Apache and Mexican, all united in celebrating new life. Later, as their guests departed and night settled over the fort, the McCullen family sat by their fire. Emma read aloud from her primer while Rafe whittled a toy horse. Lena nursed James, watching the light play across the faces she loved most in the world. This was what redemption looked like. Not a single moment of forgiveness, but 1,000 small choices to love instead of hate, to build instead of destroy, to hope instead of despair. They'd walked through fire to get here, but the flames had only refined them. Story's over, Mama, Emma announced. No, sweet pea, Lena said softly. This story's just beginning. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering the scars of the land, preparing the earth for spring's eventual return. And in a small room in a fort at the edge of forever, a family forged from sorrow and second chances settled in for the night, complete and whole, and home at last. Thank you for listening to this tale from the Wild West. We hope this story of love, redemption, and second chances touched your heart as much as it touched ours around the campfire. Where are you listening from tonight? Leave a comment below and let us know. We love connecting with fellow souls who appreciate these stories of the American frontier. Don't forget to subscribe to Wild West Campfire for more tales of courage, romance, and the indomitable human spirit. Share your thoughts about Lena and Rafe's journey. Did their story move you? Until next time, partners, keep the campfire burning and the stories flowing.